Okay, let's start. Okay, so we'll see what we have seen is the JBoss part of cluster setup. We have started the servers with all the required subsystems like JGroups and Infinis. They're already running. Now we want to set up the front end part, especially the Apache and the Proxy plugin. This part. Now this is actually required to work as a load balancer. Now usually in most of the JBoss environments it's Apache plus Proxy plugin, but if you don't want to set up Apache plus Proxy plugin, you can actually use a hardware load balancer also. With Apache plus Proxy plugin, especially with the mod cluster, provides a lot more benefits than a hardware load balancer. Now depending on the load on your front end, so you will see whether you want to use a hardware load balancer or you want to use Apache with mod cluster. Right, it changes from environment to environment. Now when we are setting up the Proxy plugin, again there are 3 Proxy plugins. All of them are open source, which means all of them can be built from the source code. So we should be able to download the source code for all of them and then build it and then configure it. Now before we go into any of those Proxy plugins, let's get on with the Apache installation. Apache installation is very simple, but it's slightly different. So let's go ahead and see the steps in the Apache installation. Now let's get on here, install Apache. So now this outline that you are seeing is the overall setup outline that we have done the JBoss cluster already. We're doing Apache now. We'll be doing Proxy plugin. That way the entire JBoss cluster will be ready. Step 1 we have already completed. Set up JBoss cluster with the HA profile and deploy the clustered app. That we have done already. Now we are installing Apache server. After the Apache server is installed, we will configure one of these 3 Proxy plugins, and finally we verify those Proxy plugins. Here it says mod cluster, but any plugin that we set up, we're going to verify. So let's go ahead and install Apache server now. Now the Apache server installation is these steps. Now here if you see these 4 steps, I made them into a detailed outline also here. Instead of calling step 1, I call it step 101. That way it will be easy to remember. So step 101 is set up the JBoss cluster, which is already done. Step 102 is what we are trying to do now. Now the outline of installing Apache server is you download and extract the source code from the Apache download location. Then you configure the source code first after extraction. Then you compile it using the make command, and you finally install it using make install. So we're going to perform these 4 steps. This step 101 is actually this setup JBoss cluster. We have actually set up 2 standalone servers in one box. So now step 102 is what we are trying to perform. Now install Apache server, that is download and extract the source code. Configure using configure command. Now the configure command here has a lot of options. If you see this one, normally this is what we will use. Configure -- prefix and Apache home. Now that usually will be sufficient, but in case of JBoss, the Apache has to be configured with a lot of other options also. So that's why we have all these options with npm worker, enable mod shade equal to most, enable maintainer mode with expat built-in, enable SSL, enable proxy, enable proxy HTTP, enable proxy ASAP. The last thing is disable the proxy balancer. Now this option has to be used if you are using the last two plugins. So if your Apache has the last option, means if it disable the proxy balancer, then you're going to use either mod Jk or mod cluster. But if you enable proxy balancer, means in the last step, if you enable the proxy balancer, then the mod proxy has to be used, which means depending on what you want to use, you have to compile the source code. If you want to use mod proxy, the last option will be -- enable proxy balancer here. It will be enable if you want to use mod proxy. If you want to use the remaining two proxy plugins, means if you want to use one of these two, you have to disable the balancer. The reason why we have to disable the balancer is these two proxy plugins internally have the balancer. So the balancer inside these proxy plugins will be used, and the balancer in the Apache itself has to be disabled. Whereas if you have mod proxy using, then the balancer in Apache server itself will be. So for the first type of proxy plugin, you enable it. For the remaining two, we disable it. Right now, for the time being, what we are doing is we will be configuring these two first, and finally we'll be configuring this. So I'm going to go ahead with disable option for the time being. Then once we are done with these two, and in a separate video somewhere, we will have a mod proxy. Alright, so mod proxy being the least used one, so we'll do it towards the end. These two are the more important stuff. So I'm going to disable the internal Apache balancer, so that when we create a balancer here in these two, that balancer will be used. Now once you have configured it, the remaining two steps are to compile the configured code and finally install it. So I'm going to go ahead and do this thing with one of our Apache installations, Apache source codes. So let's go ahead, go to our directory where we have that. So now what I'll do is I will set up the Apache source code here itself. So let me first copy the source code into this location. I'll go to the location where we have Apache source code. Ideally, you should download it from the net. If you go to Google, say download Apache HTTPD. So usually this is the first location. That's what you will see. That's what is given in your document. httpd apache.org download CGI. So if you click on that, you will be taken to the Apache download site. Now we are actually using 2.2 version of Apache. 2.4 not yet. We're not using it yet. So let's go ahead and use 2.2. When you have the 2.2.20, if you click on this one, you'll be taken to one of the source codes. So you can download actually this thing or this thing. Now this was already downloaded. It's in our system, so we're going to use the one in our system already. So So we have, let's see the source code. Where do we have the source code? Okay, this is what I'm going to use. I'm going to copy this one first into our directory and then perform everything we want. So this is our directory. So alright, so let's come back here. Now we have our downloaded source code. Now otherwise you can download it on your desktop, WinSCP to your Unix box, anything you can do. First unzip it. That is unzipped. Now extract the tar file. That's our first step. See in here, our first step is download and extract the source code. So I'm going to extract the source code .xvf httpd. So that is extracted now. After extraction is done, the configuration. Now the once you have extracted it, you will get a directory with the name. So here if you say httpd 2.2.25. So let's get into that directory here. So here we go. Now this is the command that we're going to use to configure it. Now when we are configuring, obviously we have to use the entire this thing. We'll have to type it out. So let's create a script called Apache config.sh. That way it will be easy. So let's call it configure. So I'm going to copy paste this code. Alright. Oops. Let's type it. Hyphen configure hyphen prefix equal to. Now this hyphen prefix equal to, basically here you're going to give where you want to install your Apache. Now let's say we want to install Apache in our directory, and let's say we want to install it under this location. Alright, students, this is where we have JBoss also. In the same directory we want to install Apache also. So let's, yeah, this is a prefix. Now let's fix up the remaining things. Double with npm. So this one, all these options are double hyphens, not single hyphens. With npm equal to worker double hyphen enable mods shade equal to most double hyphen enable maintainer mode double hyphen with expat equal to built-in enable proxy and double hyphen enable proxy http double hyphen enable proxy SAP. Now the final one, because we will be doing mod Jk first and then mod cluster, Let's disable it. Mod proxy requires enabling, but mod jk and mod cluster requires disable proxy balance. Alright, so once you're given it, you're ready to save it, close it. So now you're ready to go. Alright, now this is the Apache config. Now we could have typed the entire command, but if something goes wrong, we have to again type it. So I've created a script out of it. So I have a script. Now go ahead and configure it. So this is step 2 of Apache installation is what we are doing. We are configuring using configure command. This is the entire thing. Now if you see in these things, this enable SSL is for SSL enable. Later we can configure SSL also for Apache server. So then we don't have to really rebuild from the code. So all these things basically make sure everything required is already enabled. So now go ahead and run this command. It's going to check all required settings exist or not required header files. Right, so that is done. So configuring is done. Now the next two steps are to compile it using make command and install it using make install. So let's go ahead and run the make command in the same directory where the code is, means inside this directory. So go ahead and run it. So this will compile the source code. Now obviously for the compilation it requires a C compiler. Here you are seeing the GCC, the GNU C compiler. That should already be there on your system. If you don't have GCC, it will complain that you don't have a proper compiler on your system. So the compilation is still happening. Alright, so the compilation is done. And now let's go back and finish the last step, the installation using make install command. So again run the same make command with install option this time. Now it gets installed in the directory where you wanted it. I think we gave a wrong location. we should have given Apache here. We miss the Apache part. So now I think it's installed here directly. You see, you got bin, conf, all this stuff here itself. I think I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to just redo this thing quickly. Remove the existing ones. This was directly created under Apache. No, under JBoss ApacheInstallation. So let's try to create inside Apache directory. So I'm removing everything. We're back to the original. Now we don't want to use this thing again, so I'm going to just keep the Apache config and remove this directory also. We'll start from extraction again. So remove. I'm redoing everything again. So now everything is ready. Let's go ahead and extract the tar file again. Tar xvf std extracted. Now move this Apache config into the extracted directory. Now get into the extracted directory. Now run it. We have to change this one here. If we run it again, it will be the same mistake. This time, -prefix, this is what we want to change. Apache directory. What? So now run Apache. So this is the configure step. Everything same except we change the directory. Now compile it using make command. It's still going on. Alright, now finally install it. I will run the make command again. I'm running make install this time. Usually the rerunning the make command does not cause any issues, but if it does, we will see how to troubleshoot. Alright, so we have built it also. Now let's go to the location where we try to install it. We should have an Apache directory over there. So go to cd students, JBoss ApacheInstallation 101. This is our Apache home directory. This is familiar. It will have the same set of directories. Now out of these directories, if you see, one major difference is between what we have done earlier, or if you actually look at the httpd.conf file, this will have a lot of other modules already enabled. See this one. Normally, if you don't use all the options that you have here, means if you use only the first one, these modules will not be there. Whereas because you have enabled a lot of modules, you have enabled all these things, all these modules are already created and they are already loaded. You can actually get into modules directory of Apache Home and you will see all these modules. Means you can build the modules during Apache installation itself. So these are a lot of modules. Some of these modules are for SSL. Some of these modules are mod proxy. If you see this one, mod proxy related modules are already created. You can simply use them. In the same way, SSL related modules also sometimes you will see. Should see it somewhere. I think they are not there. But we have enabled SSL. So we should see modules related to SSL also. So grab SSL from httpd.conf if you do. SSL module itself is not there. It's not there. We'll see that one later. Right. Now, apart from that, if you get into the modules, you will actually see all the modules. So this is Apache Home modules directory. These are the inbuilt modules. So if you just use -- prefix, you won't see all these modules. And because you have used a lot of other options, you're seeing all these modules. So now let's go ahead and start the Apache server. Now before we go into the Apache server startup, just let's set up the listen port of Apache server and then start the server empty, just to check whether everything is fine or not. So I opened httpd.conf file. I'm going to set up the listen address here and stuff 8080. Let's say we're going to use 5050. 8080 we cannot use because JBoss is using 8080. So I have used 5050. That's one thing. We can actually set the IP also here, 192.168.128.6, 5050. So I've just taken this syntax itself. Now another thing that we want to set up is server name. So if you come down further, you will see server name here. Copy paste that line and change it to according to whatever you need. So 192.168.128.6, 5050. That's where we want it. And now it's ready. Let's go to the bin directory. Check the syntax first. So -t is to test the syntax. Once you are good with the syntax, apachectl start. Now that should have actually started the Apache server. Just check it using ps-ef grep for httpd. That's your Apache server. Started at 7:23, which is the current timestamp. Alright, 7:23. So this is when it should be started. So now let's go ahead and check the log file also. The Apache server log file is logs directory. So you will have the error log file. Let's do a cat on it. Make sure you don't see any errors. This file is very small at this point. It keeps growing as we have other things. Now that this server is running, you can actually see that port number in netstat-na grep 5050. This is running. We can actually send a request to this one and it will serve the page. This is for mod proxy. We'll be talking about this one later. This is our JBoss cluster running on the back end. Now let's go ahead. Let's try to hit our proxy server, Apache server. So 6, the Apache is running on 5050. And see, the Apache is empty at this point. So it is not integrated. It simply says it works because it serves the page from the htdocs location. So it works, which means the Apache installation is correct and it's working. Now we have to configure the proxy plugin. That's our next step. So here if you see step 103, we have 4 steps: 101, 102, 103 and 104. 104 is basically verification. So only 3 steps. Now step 103 is basically configuring one of the 3 plugins. Now you can use any of these plugins, but obviously the most advanced is Mod Cluster. In some environments, some people are still using Mod Jk. Mod Jk mainly comes from the Tomcat environment. It is developed for Tomcat. So we will first configure Mod Jk, then we will see how it works, we'll verify it, then we try to understand why Mod Cluster is better than Mod Jk, and then we will go ahead and configure Mod Cluster also. Mod Proxy, we will do it in a different session because Mod Proxy requires your Apache installation again in a different with the configuration. Especially we have to enable the proxy balancer if you want to set up Mod Proxy, whereas these two require you to disable the balancer. So we have already done the disable thing, so we'll be configuring these two. And apart from this, obviously most of the times these are the two that gets used, not the Mod Proxy stuff. So let's go ahead and configure the Mod Jk. Now the Mod Jk configuration, Mod Jk is again open source. There is a .so file related to Mod Jk called mod_jk.so. Now we have to build this .so file. Now normally the .so file is, if it is a proprietary software like WebLogic or WebSphere, you would get this .so file from Oracle or IBM. But Mod Jk being open source from Tomcat, we will get the source code directly and we can build from the source code. So an additional thing that we are actually doing here is we are actually building this .so file also this time. Now once we build this .so file, we have to again configure it in the httpd.conf file. Now, before we go ahead and build those stuff, we will try to understand the mod Jk configuration, or we will try to understand the architecture. We'll see how the mod Jk actually works. That will be helpful in understanding the internals of mod Jk. If there are any issues, we'll be able to troubleshoot them. So let's try to see the architecture. Now, these are the differences between mod Jk and mod class. We'll come back to this one later. Now, let's see how the mod Jk works. This is the architectural diagram of mod Jk. Alright, now if you see this one, this is the architectural diagram of mod Jk. Now here at the very front you have Apache server, which is this. Alright, the colors will be a little confusing, so bear with me. This is Apache, and this is the mod Jk that we are trying to configure. Alright, and on the right side we have already configured the Proxy plugin, the JBoss with 2 instances. JBoss instance 1, we're calling it node 1. JBoss instance 2, we can call it node 2, or we can call it server 1, server 2 also. Anything is okay. Now obviously these two JBoss instances were started with HA profile, so they will have the Infinite span with them, then J groups with them, so that the multicast addressing and HTTP replication can work. Now this right side part we have already set it up. This part we have already set it up. Right. Now what we want to set up is the left one, means especially the mod Jk. This also Apache also we have set up. Now if you see the structure of mod Jk internally has 3 workers. They're more like internal modules of mod Jk. One of the workers actually does the load balance. The other 2 workers will tell the status of the backend servers. Alright, so usually we use the load balancer to divide the load across the destinations, whereas the status workers are worker 2 and worker 3 in this case are gk-status and gk manager. These will tell you the status of the backend servers. Now the load balancer is where we tell about the backend servers. Now the backend servers are called balance workers. See, it's a little confusing here. Internally, mod Jk has workers. One of the workers is load balancer. The load balancer itself has workers again. They're called balance workers. Now, if we have 2 balance workers, we call them balance worker 1 and balance worker 2, or else any number of balance workers. If we have 3 or 10, we can always set all those balance workers inside the load balancer part of the mod Jk. The remaining 2 is to understand the status of the mod Jk. We can actually open a GUI for mod Jk. I'll show it to you. Then understand or monitor what is happening to your request, whether your requests are actually being load balanced or not. That's what we'll be monitoring. Alright, so here what we normally do is, when we are configuring, so the architecture is pretty simple. We have 3 workers. One worker is a load balancer worker. The 2 workers are status related workers. The load balancer worker itself has balance workers again. That's where you give the backend node details. And another thing about the backend node details is Mod Jk can send requests to only AZP port, which means the communication between Mod Jk and JBoss happens only on AZP port. Now, it does not mean that the incoming requests are AZP requests. The incoming requests are always HTTP requests. Alright. Now, but Apache on Mod Proxy, what they do is when they are talking to JBoss, it uses AZP protocol. Now, AZP is Apache JServe protocol version 1.3. That's why you call it AZP 1.3. It's not 13, it's AZP 1.3. Right. Now, when we send a request from Mod Jk to the JBoss, we will actually send it to the AZP port and not to the HTTP port. That's one thing that we have to be careful. Now, coming back to this one, the architecture. So architecture, if you look at it, Mod Jk has workers. The workers are two types. One is a load balancer worker. Other one is a status worker. So first, what we usually do is we will define these workers. We will say you have 3 workers. You will just give the list of workers. Then you will tell what type of workers they are. Then finally, inside the load balancer worker, you will tell about the balance workers, which are the backend. So to briefly put it into points, you say list of workers. In this case, worker 1, worker 2, worker 3. Then you set the types of those list, types of the workers. Just now you have set a list, right? Whatever you put in the list, you tell about the types. Now, in our case, the list is going to be, let's say the first one, the load balancer, you call it my load balancer. Then you call it JK status, JK manager. This is a list of workers, means these are the names. We're not telling about the types. Now the types of workers, if you say my load balancer or my LB is a type load balancing, means that is the load balancing module usually represented by LB. The same way JK status is actually a status related type. JK manager again is also status related. So we have created a list of workers with whatever names we want. See, the list of workers can have any names. Then we told what are the types of that list of workers. It's something like, let's say you have 3 pets. Now you will have names to the pets. Now once you have names to the pets, then you tell what type of pet it is. Let's say you may have a cat, a dog, and a pig with you. All the 3 are your pets. Now cat have a name, dog has a name, pig has a name. So what you are saying is, first thing, list of pets equal to, you are telling the names. Let's say your cat name is Catty, or your cat name, put it something. Alright, Catty is your cat name, Doggy is your dog name, Piggy is your pig name. This is a list of pets you have. Now you want to define their types of list of. Now the first type, Catty, is of the type cat. Then Doggy is the type dog. And finally Piggy, that's the name of your pig. Then you have defined the types of those The same way here, you first define the workers with whatever names you have. You can put any name you want. Then you define their types. Now, all these properties are usually put into a file called worker properties file. So we need a worker properties file that has a list of workers and their types. Now this worker properties file, and apart from worker properties file, there are certain other configurations. Like this module itself has to be loaded. So somewhere we will have load module mod Jk. So all the configuration of worker properties we will put into another file called http d-jk.conf file, and this file we put it finally into httpd.conf file. So we have three files here. File 1 is worker properties file, which is included inside http://jk.conf file. That is file 2. The file 2 internally again is included into httpd.conf file. Now this type of configuration actually makes it clean. Let's say you don't want mod Jk. All that you have to do is remove this file from httpd.conf file. Instead of removing, simply comment the entry where this file is included. So what we are seeing here is the mod Jk architecture. Now we will build the mod Jk underscore mod underscore jk.so. After building it, then we will configure it with all these statistics. All right. So let's go ahead now that you understand the architecture. So architecture of mod Jk, just to brief you, it has workers. The workers have types, means the worker can be a load balancer worker, which actually does the load balancing. Then there are two status workers that will allow you to see the status of the load balancing, means whether the load balancing is happening or not. The mod Jk can actually tell you how many requests are being sent to node 1 and how many requests are being sent to node 2, like that. So let's go ahead. The configuration part we will do at the end. Now let's try to build the mod Jk. So building mod Jk. Now for building mod Jk, I'm going to use the PPT does not have the building part. I'm going to use another document here. All right, this is an unstoppable JBoss document. This is a Word document. So I'm going to follow the steps in this document to build the mod Jk. This document also has Apache installation, the one that we just now did. You download, extract source code, you configure the source code using this. This is what you get. Then you compile, install, and proceed to Proxy plugin. And this is the Proxy plugin configuration we're trying to do now. Now there are some prerequisites, like Apache server should already be installed, which we already did. Now we are trying to create the .so file and then configure the mod underscore jk.so file. Now these 6 steps are the high level summary. These are the 6 steps that we're going to perform now for building and configuring. The first step is basically the source code thing. Now we have to download the source code, and it's already there in your clones. So use that source code. Now once we have, or copy it from our stage server, anything is okay. You just need source code. In this case, it says copy the source code from the stage server. See, when you say source code, it is not the .so file. Before you build this .so file, there is a zip file. That's what your source code is. I think the source code on our cloud server is this one. Yeah, you have it under Mod Jk directory, all the source code. Oops, I don't have anything in there. Mod cluster source code is there, but Mod Jk is not there. It should be there in your clone. I'm going to use the source code from another directory. Yeah, this is the source code. Let me just copy it to that. Okay, now I just copied the source code into mod underscore jk. You will have it under JBoss related files of home directory. So this is the source code. Now this source code, you can actually download it from net, guys. So you can just have to say download mod jk source code. With your Google, you will be actually landing on Apache Tomcat. You can download it from here. Tomcat connector jk 1.2. So you will download the source code. Right, I just downloaded it already, so it's already there on your clone, so use this one. Now that's your first step, which means you are asked to SCP the source code which is existing from the stage server to your clone. Once that is done, that's just a tar file, guys. This is not a .so file. From this tar file we have to create a .so file, and that's what we're going to do. So build the mod underscore jk.so shared object from the source code. That is our step 2. Now here, if you say step 1 is SCP, then extract it. Then to build it, after extraction, see this one. This is your extraction thing. So let's go ahead and build the .so file of mod jk. Now we'll do all the building in our own directory. Students JBoss ITP. Let's create a directory mod jk. Now copy that directory from original location to our directory. We will do everything in our directory. Just don't touch the original source code. So copy that tar file. If something goes wrong, we can still start it from the beginning. So let's copy into this directory. Okay. So copy this into this. So I have copied the tar file into this directory. Where is it? So here. We'll be doing everything related to mod jk in here itself. So let's go ahead and extract the tar file. That's our first step. Extract it. That's pretty fast. So here, extract the source code .xvf, this one. Now when you extracted it, this command extracts the source code in the directory Tomcat connectors 1240 source. Now you will see that directory actually created. See this one. This is the directory where your source code is there. Now, as we know, any source code based installation is simply configure, compile, and install, which means configure command, and make install command. But here, the configure command itself has to be created. So we usually have configure this, then make and make install. But for mod Jk, what we have is, or even mod cluster also, what we have is, we have to build the configuration file itself. It does not exist by default. Now, if you see from in the source code, you don't have a configure script. We have to build it. Now that is available usually in the native directory. That's what you'll see here. CD to the Tomcat connector. Just now we extracted CD to native. Now you have to build it. It exists, but it's not sufficient. So you have to build the config. So you just execute the build config thing. That will build the configure script. Now you can actually do lsf and ltr. You see this one? It was just now updated. Means when you run the build config.sh, the configure script was built. Now once your configure script is ready, now you know everything from here. Except the configure has to be compiled with an existing Apache home. It has an option called with APXS. This is Apache portable extensions. APX means Apache portable extensions. So this is actually so here if you see Apache portable extensions. These are series of extensions that will help you run Apache in a portable format. Now you don't have to worry about what they are exactly. Just use this command that exists in your Apache home. This apxs command exists in Apache home bin. Now just now we have installed Apache, so if you see in that installation of Apache, we should be able to see that apxs command. It's a command. So let's get into ITP JBoss ITP 101. We have installed Apache under Apache directory. So I'm going to go ahead into Apache directory, and inside the bin we have apxs. This is the command we are telling. Now by telling this thing, what we are doing actually is, I am configuring the mod Jk for this Apache extension or Apache portable extensions. That means the Apache should already be installed even before you start mod Jk. Now go ahead and configure it. So configure -- with apxs equal to your Apache home bin, this entire directory with apxs. See, this is a command. You are telling the Apache portable extensions command is available in this location, asking to configure the mod Jk source code. So enter. This is mod jk.so file configuration. Now once that is done, the remaining two steps are well known: make and make install. So go ahead and make. This is for compiling. And finally make install. That's all. Now, the good thing about this one is this make install actually copies the .so file into your Apache home modules directory. See, when you configured this thing, you have actually given the details of Apache home. So your mod Jk already knows about your Apache home. Because it knows about the Apache home, during the last make install, it copies the .so file into your Apache home modules directory. So if you go to Apache home modules directory now, let's go in here. This is our Apache home. Go into modules directory, dls-ltr. You will see the mod Jk. When is it created? Just now, 7:53. Right, just now. So your mod Jk is ready. So you have built the mod Jk from the source code. You have downloaded the source code, you extracted it, then you build the configure file, then you configured it with APXS, Apache Portable Extensions, then you compiled it and you installed it, which means now the mod jk.so file is ready. Once this file is ready, so your Proxy plugin is ready. Alright. Now this Proxy plugin, when you are actually creating it, it does not just create the .so file, it creates the two important files that you're actually looking for. If you go into the same directory or a native directory, one step above it, in the conf directory of mod Jk, see this one, the source code itself. We are looking in the source code. We're going to use, I think it does not create these files. These files exist by default. Okay, so the source code basically created the mod jk.so file. Now it's time we go ahead and configure this mod jk.so file for our Apache server, so that when we send request to Apache server, it can load balance it across the backend destinations. Now the configuration of mod jk, as we are telling, it simply has two files. One file is worker.properties file. Let's go back here. Worker.properties file, which is this. The worker.properties file has the list of workers, then their types. Now this worker.properties file goes to http d-jk file .conf file. Now apart from the workers.properties related things, http d-jk will have a lot of other settings also. We will see those settings. Now all those settings are related to mod jk. Now all these settings we will include it in the actual http d.conf file, which is our Apache server configuration file. So we need these two files first to be created. Then we will include those files into http d.conf file. So this worker.properties file, I'm going to put it under Apache home. Let's call it, so I'm going to put it into Apache home conf directory, because that's where we have all the configuration files. This also Apache home conf directory. This is where we have Apache home httpd also. So this file exists already in Apache. These two files we'll have to copy them. So I'm going to copy these two files. The sample files exist with the source code itself. So I'm going to take from the source code. See here, if you see, first time you remember when you extracted the source code, this is what we got when we extracted the mod jk source code. This is the directory we got. Inside this, we went into native and then we went ahead and built the mod jk. Now, instead of getting into native, go into conf directory. You will find the two important files: mod jk conf worker.properties and worker.properties minimal. Now these two files are almost same, except that the workers.properties file will have all the commands and it's a bigger file, whereas the minimal file is a simple file. So we're going to use the minimal file. Now let's first copy these two files into your Apache home conf directory. So this is our modules Apache home. This is conf directory of Apache home. This is our actual main file, and into the same directory I'm going to copy the other two. So these two files are available with mod jk source code. So copy this file into this directory. That's done. Copy the second file. See, the name of the second file has a minimal. We will rename it in a moment. Then get in there. Alright, so copied this. Now those two steps are also there. See this one. Copy httpd jk file to Apache home. Now I copied, I think the workers.properties file will be copied later. So let's go to our directory here. This is this. Oh, here we are. Now if you observe this one, we have both mod jk.conf worker.properties. Now let's rename this file into what we want. We want it to be worker.properties. Now this file name is already included in the httpd.conf file. So we're going to configure this file first and then put it into httpd.conf. Now those steps are already in here. So we did a copy of httpd jk.conf file to Apache home conf. Now what we are asked to do is include this file in the httpd.conf file. Let's see how we include it. So we have to open up this httpd.conf file, make this entry. Alright, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm just following the document, it will be easy for you. vi httpd.conf. Now if you go towards the end of this document, you will see a lot of include statements. See, the reason why include is done is we can put everything inside this file directly in httpd.conf also, but instead of making the original configuration file clumsy, what we do is all mod jk related settings we will put it into one file, and that file will put it into this original. So I'm going to copy paste this line, include. Now our file is under conf directory. The file name is httpd.jk.conf. Now we did not edit this file yet. We will do it in a moment. We simply added that file already. So basically the httpd.conf file already has this file in it. Now if you open up this file, it will have this thing in it. So that's what we are trying to do now. Now let's see the next step. The next step is rename the worker.properties file to properties, which we already done. Now let's set up this worker.properties. So vi the worker.properties file. As I told you, the worker.properties file will have the list of workers and the types of the workers. Now if you see in here, the list of workers, like the names of the pets that you have, like your catty, doggy and piggy, the list, you can call the list anything you want. Let's say I'm calling it my load balancer, jk status and jk manager. Now once I have defined the list, I need to tell about the types. I have to tell my catty is of type cat, my doggy is of type dog, my piggy is of type pig. So you're defining the types of your pets. The same way here, the workers types is what you're going to define now. Now again, that types can be defined here itself. See this one. Okay, defining this thing. I'm going to make it a little simple for you. So let's define the types. We will remove everything else later. So this is the type. Worker, my worker name, mylb. What's the type? See, the first worker I am defining mylb. So worker mylb type is a load balancer. This cannot change. This should be whatever you are putting here. The other two are of status types. So I'm going to take, you can define again here. My second worker, worker.jk status type is status. This is a status type worker. The same way, the third worker, JK manager, the type of this worker is also status type. Alright. Now once you have defined the list and their types, you're almost ready, except our load balancer will have balance workers with it. So let's define the balance workers now. Now it's already there here. I'm going to take it off. Or say it's just a copy paste from a different location. You are defining the list of workers, then you are defining their types, and finally the load balancer workers you are defining. So worker for my load balancer, the balance workers, let's call them node 1, node 2, or we can call them server 1, server 2, anything you want. So let's call them server 1, server 2. Server 1, server 2. Now we have to define the properties of server 1, server 2. Now there are three properties: the type of the node, then the IP of the node, and the port number of the node. Now to keep it simple, let's use the same terminology. Instead of calling it server 1, let's call it node 1. That way it will be more authentic. It's not encode, it's node 1 and node 2. Now I'm going to copy paste these three lines again in here. For node 1, the same three lines I'll have to do for node 2 also. Now be very careful here. This name should be what you have defined here. You can have your own name, but that's what you should say. So this is for node 1. So I'm defining the three properties for node 1. I'm saying it is going to be listening, node 1 is listening on ASAP 1.3. It is on the IP 192.168.128.6 and the ASAP port for node 1. Node 1 is server 1, is this one. For node 2, it's going to be 100 plus 8009 plus 100 because we have used 100 offset in our JBoss setup. Now the same three things should be done for node 2 also. So let's go ahead and set up the three things. Instead of node 1, let's call it node 2. And this is also ASAP 1.3. IP is same. If it is different, just give a different IP if the server is running on a different box. The port number AGP of node 2 is this. So you have defined the list of servers, their types, then for the load balancer, the list of balance workers and the properties of the balance workers. That's it. That's all you have. Now make sure you remove everything else in this file. You can't keep it. We have already defined all these properties, so remove everything else. You can actually comment, make proper comments here. Oops. So you can see here, this is define list of workers, or define names of workers, you can call it, like catty, doggy, piggy, all the stuff, names of workers. Then once you define the names of workers, then you're telling define the types of the workers. Alright, types of the workers. So you're telling my LB is of type load balancing. JK status is of type status type. JK manager is also of type status type. So you have defined the type. Then now you're define the balance workers for LB or my LB. So that's what you're doing. These three are defined properties. Now, okay, now again, this also can be commented. The final thing is define the properties of the balance workers. See here, the node 1, node 2, whatever you have defined should be the ones that should be used. If you are using server 1 server to here, use server 1 server to here. Alright, so your worker.properties file is ready. The worker.properties file, you have actually set who are your workers, what is their status, and then who are the balance workers, what are their properties on the backend. Now this file is ready. Now this file is actually included in httpd-jk file. Now you can actually see it. So if you see this one, edit workers, first define the list. This is what we did. Then define the types of all the items. That's what we did. I think we missed this this thing. It's okay to miss it, or else we can actually put it. Then we define the balance workers, node 1, node 2. Then we define the properties of the balance workers. Remember, this is the AZP port, not the HTTP port. Now I think we have used the proper port, right? 8009 and 8109, yes. Now your worker.properties file is ready. Now you have to open up the next step. Your next step is to open up the httpd-jk file, and you have to set up the virtual hosts, which means you have to tell how your request will be divided. If you get JK status requests, how they are going to be defined. If you get JK manager request, how they are going to be defined. And finally, if you get anything else, who will handle it. So I'm going to copy paste these lines. Let's first open that file. We'll get an idea. So vi stpd.conf. Sorry, not the httpd.conf file, the jk.conf file, httpd.jk.conf. Now see this one, the load module is already in there, so we don't have to actually load it. It's already loaded. The if module is already created. Inside the if module, the worker.properties file is also included. That's why we are not doing anything. We are just creating this file. Then the log file is also defined. This is an exclusive log file for Mod Jk. The information level of log file, you can put it to info, or if you are debugging something, you can put it to debug. Alright, this is another thing you can actually do. Let's call it debug, just because this is the first time. The shared memory related things are in this file also. We are actually interested in something else. We want to set up the incoming traffic. See this one. Location. If it is JK status, these three things will work. We also want to allow JK status requests from our network, internal network. So we'll say 192.168.128. The last number you can actually leave. Means any IP from this network will still work. The same way for JK manager also, we want to allow from everybody in the network. 192.168.128. I think we have to give a dot. I'm not sure. It simply says allow from this, right? So let's say, I think we had to give a dot. Okay, the document does not talk about a dot at the end, but I think we have to. Okay, let's go without it. If there's a problem, we'll see that. So once that is done, let's come back here. So you are done with step 6 also. Finally, tell the Apache server to redirect the request to the load balancer. Means when Apache receives the request, it should redirect it to the worker inside the load balancer. So you're going to tell here jk mount lb, the load balancer. Alright, it can be lb or it should be my lb. In this case, I think it should be my lb. This is a wrong document here. Be careful a little bit, because it's my lb is the name that we are using. So you should ask the Apache server to redirect all the requests. See this one, the star means all the requests to my lb. Now before we go next, going to step 7, we're going to add this one. Add the following below JQ workers file in the that's not correct. Say this is wrong again. httpd. It's not httpd.conf file, so this step is slightly problematic step, guys. We have to add the jk mount point in httpd-jk file. So I'm going to change this thing a little bit. So this is going to be httpd-jk.conf file. Alright, if your document is already corrected, fine, but otherwise use this one. So I'm going to open up this file, add this line with my lb in it, just below this line. Alright, so open up this file first. So this file is already open. Let's search for jk worker file. I think that's the first line where the workers file is defined. So let's go to that location. Here we go. So this is your jk workers file. So we're going to use, just below that, put your jk mount related thing. So you're telling to transfer all the requests to the load balancer. jk mount /star, transfer it to mylb. The mylb configuration is defined in the workers properties. That's it. You're done. This file is already included in the httpd.conf file. So all that you have to do is just restart the server. Now when you restart the server, the log file for mod jk is this and the error log file this. That's your configuration. The access part we will see in a moment once we will verify it. So let's go ahead and restart our server. Get into bin. Now check the syntax. Apache CTL is not there. Apache CTL -t. Syntax is okay. Now let's say Apache CTL restart. JBoss for httpd. So make sure it's just now started. So 8:19, we're good. So now let's go to the log files. Get into logs directory. So you have the mod jk.log file, tail-f on it. It's actually shows everything that is happening. Now this is in debug mode, so you'll see a lot of information. Now the same way you can actually see the error log also. That should tell you this .so file is loaded or not loaded. JBoss ATP Apache logs directory. The other file that we are looking at is error log. So this is error log. Right. So the error log, because we have a separate log file, we don't see much about this thing. Now you can, in the log file of mod jk, you can actually see all these things. A child, initializing the child, watchdog, and then maintaining worker, my load balance, all that stuff. Now we want to verify it. Now before we verify it, let's start the servers on the backend. We don't have the servers running on the backend. Now let's keep this error log running. So this is mod jk log, this is error log. I think I'm gonna set this up. Mod jk log, error log. Let's start our JBoss servers. So Apache with mod jk plugin, Proxy plugin is ready. Now let's start our JBoss servers like yesterday. The two servers are in the same box. Let's go ahead and start it. Start server 1.sh, start server 2.sh. Let's make sure they are running. So this is server 2. Seems to be coming up without any issues. This error is okay, guys, for now. We can ignore it for now. So it can actually see both views of the clustered application. Now we can actually look at the log file for server 1 also. Make sure there are no errors in it. Yeah, this is also up. So you have your PSF Java. These are the two servers that are running. Alright, this one and this one. And your Apache server is also running. PSF for httpd. Now what we want to know is if the proxy plugin is redirecting the request or not. Now the testing steps are also given here. And the good thing about the mod jk is you can actually see the status of load balancing. That's what we've been configuring so far. You see this one? The jk status can be accessed on Apache. Now go ahead and try to access the status. So our Apache is running on 192.168.128.6 with port number 5050. We just have to give a JK status. This will show you a nice view of what the JK status is doing. Let's see, it will tell you listing load balancing workers. One load balancer we have, MyLB. It will tell you what are the backend servers, what is their statistics, and what is the meaning of all this data. Now we won't be worrying about all the data. We are interested in only some of these data. See this one. One is the number of requests, ACC. Alright, that you can see here. We want to make sure both the nodes, our node 1 and node 2, they are okay. The state should be okay always. Alright, then it should be active. Once we have activated, the state is okay, and then we want to see the number of requests. Now, as we send requests, the number of requests keep changing. So let's go ahead and run a request. Now let's first run one request, then we'll get into step 10. This is an infinite request. Now before we do that, this is not the URL that we are accessing. We are actually accessing this URL. This is where our server is running, right? So let's try to access it once. This is also running. This is also running. Now remember, these two are HTTP ports. Our mod Jk actually does not work on HTTP. It works on AJP, but this part will be same. See this one. But see this one. And one more thing is the AJP is between proxy and the server. When we are sending the request, we are actually sending it to the 5050. So I'm going to send a request to our Apache server and ask the Apache server to give me this space. If it can give it, it means my proxy plugin configuration is working. I can actually see it in the log file. This is the mod Jk log file. So I'm going to hit this one and come back to the log file. Let's see in the log file if we get anything. Nothing is actually shown, but it's still working. See this one. I got my piece. Let's look into the access log. Yeah, I think we got something. So this is where it was originally. Then the watchdog thread is running again, but let's look at the access log. Maybe it will give us some information. Not much. This is just now activated. 8:23. Yeah, nothing much. Unless something goes wrong, I don't think we'll see anything here. But our important point is we were able to access our backend application from the Apache server on 5050, which means your mod proxy configuration is running. But we also want to know that the load balancing is happening. Now that we can see from the JK status tab, if we can see the number of requests, ACC is number of requests. Now this should keep changing. I think it's number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ACC. So 1 is this one node, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think somewhere here the number keeps changing. Now for that one, we just have to refresh this page. Let's see if one of the numbers changes. I'm trying to reload this page. Nothing actually changed. Let's send another request. We got the page again. Now come back here, reload it, see which, yeah, here we go. This number changed. Now reload it to search this space. Now it's changed again. So it's actually going to the same node again and again. Refresh this space, send some 10-15 requests, guys. Let's see if the load balancing happens. So keep clicking on it, and you come back, reload it. Now here we go. Now you have a pretty load balance. 8 requests here, 6 requests here. Now keep hitting it. Come back here, reload it. You can see the load balance. Now this is one way of hitting it. Another way is you can actually run an infinite while loop that keeps requesting for this page. wget is more like accessing a page from the browser. wget is a Unix command prompt command to access any web page. Now you can run this wget command in a while loop and make, if that while loop is infinite, means the condition is always true. So you will simulate an ever processing request, or if you have to actually use that. So let's say I go into temp. Now be very careful with this infinite while loop. It will fill up your system. So let's create a directory, mkdir. Let's say loop. All right, get into loop. Let's just run a script while true. So what happens is, let's say this one. This is what we are doing. We are trying wget our request. This one. When we do this one, our Unix machine actually downloads that page, and you will see the response code 200. 200 means we know 200 series is successful. Now when you did that one, it actually downloaded the page. When you do that again, the wget, alright, it downloads the page one more time. So you have 2 pages. Now like that, whatever number of times you do, those many number of pages will be there. So this one, it's 1. Now when you run it in a while loop, you're going to create a large number of such pages. So you need to have enough space on your disk. Otherwise, make sure the while loop is killed after some time. So while true, which is always true, do whatever you want to do. So this is what you're doing. So while true, do this. Means the condition is always true. Go ahead and run it. Now this keeps hitting your Apache server. Now this gives you a nice view of your load balancing. Now keep reloading it. You should see the change in number. See this one. We have sent too many requests by now. 421. Reload it again. I say this one, 805 per second. This is, now you will see a similar statistics from a different location also. But overall, this seems to be the number. That is the good one. Yeah, like this. There are too many requests, guys. So we are sending, we should ideally, I think our while loop is actually a bit very dangerous while loop. Just make sure you kill it. What you can actually do for that while loop is you can introduce a sleep command in it. See, there are too many files created, so just remove everything. See, there are 5,000 requests we have sent already. It's dangerous. We don't want to send those many requests. Let's just run a while loop. While true, do wget this page, and let's sleep for a second before we hit the next request. So semicolon, sleep 1 second, then you are done. Now this is 1 second, 1 request. This is much better now. Now if you go back to the status, reload it. Now you have nice 3039, 3042. Slowly it's moving. If you don't use that sleep command, you're going to crash your system. Be very careful when you're practicing this one. See this one, what we are interested in is that Mod Jk is now able to load balance it, and we can see how much load is actually reaching each of these nodes. Now if you kill one of these nodes, let's say we go ahead and kill one of these nodes, ps-ef graph for Java. Now let's kill the server 2. So I'm going to kill this one. Yes, kill -9 insert. So we have only one server now. Alright, so reload it. Now your request will not go to the node 2. So 3062 will become stagnant there. Only node 1 number keeps changing. So all the requests will have to now go to node 1 only. You see this one? The number is changing only on node 1. Node 2, nothing is changing. Alright, that's so it's 3062. So if one server goes down, now if you kill the other server also, -9, you don't have any server now. Now your while loop also will not give 200, it gives you 503, service temporarily unavailable. This is the error you got. The JK status also will tell you the state of the application. See this one, this is error now. This is what we don't want. We want to have OK here. The state of the application has to be OK. If it is error, then there is an error. That's what we don't want. So this is Mod Jk doing the integration. So you have Apache, Mod Jk, and JBoss cluster. Now anything you send to the Apache server automatically gets load balanced across the backend servers. Alright, so that's for Mod Jk. Now the similar setup we have to do for Mod cluster. Now Mod cluster is much better than Mod Jk in terms of some of the features. We will see what those features are, then we will see the architecture of Mod cluster, then we will see how to configure Mod cluster, and we will also see whether Mod cluster is actually doing the load balancing or not. Alright, so that will be in a different session. We'll close it for the day. Bye bye.